Function. So what exactly function? First understand what is function, and then you'll come to know like what all different types or how to work with function. Okay, so function is nothing but like a state of different statements which we collect together in a bundle, or it's like a set of statements organized together so that all statements can perform a specific task, and that all statements when we collect together so that all things the collectively we can call as a function. So in R, there are two types of function. Like first, which is already present, that is nothing but built-in functions, and second, that we have to define as per our requirement. It's like a customization that is called as a user-defined function. Okay. So when we use function, basically we can avoid repeating the same task, and also we can reduce the complexity. So to understand the main code, or how we can maintain the code, we can logically break it into small parts of the function. So the main purpose, like we can create a function or we can write a function to carry any specific task multiple times. We can repeat the task with multiple elements. Then that function may or may not have argument. So what exactly argument we'll see in detail, but here suppose I have this x with some value, and if I want to execute this x, so here I'm using print. This is nothing but function. You can see these are all base functions, and whenever we use function it comes with parenthesis, and inside parenthesis we have to pass argument. So here as we want to execute value of x, so I'm passing x as an argument inside print function, and let's execute this. So we are getting the actual value assigned to that x variable. Okay, so here this x which we pass, it's called as an argument. So this is not compulsory, so it's like may or may not you can use the arguments. Also there is a if you are writing your own line of code, then there are some code you have to write, so it contains a body. I'll give the anatomy how to write a function, user defined function basically, and what exactly you want as a result. So that is nothing but in returns what you want as a output, so that we have to write with the return keyword. So this is also optional. You may or may not use this return statement for output values. Okay, so simply function is what? Block of code which performs specific task. So this is a like automation. So we need to give input, whatever the operations are there, we have to perform that operations and returns the output. That's it. Okay, clear? So here we have created this x variable with value 10 and applied function print. In case if you're not aware about any function, how to use that function, then you can take help here in help section. Like here we have already I think executed this part. Help for print, how to write print. So print its argument and returns. So how to write this x and other parameters. So other parameter, what all parameters we can write. So quote, either you can keep this true or false, maximum level, width if you want. So these are different arguments along with their description. So like this you can take help. Here you just need to write question mark. Suppose there are we'll discuss some built-in functions, like if you have any data structure, like consider you have a vector and you want to calculate all elements, the sum of all elements from that vector. So what exactly use of sum? If you're not aware, then you can take help, read the manual, read the arguments. Like here let's execute some function and you can read here. So sum returns the sum of all values present in arguments. Like here you can write NARM. NARM means like if there is any NA value, so just remove that value. NA, like this NaN value, some data might having some missing values or ambiguous values. So these all values you can remove. Then all things about how to use this. Some examples are also given. We'll execute this. So these are all built-in function. No need to write what to do or how to execute. So it's already there. Syntax is already given. We just need to call that function and execute that function. So let's create one. Suppose here we'll create one variable and create one vector. So let's write some values here. Any random values you can mention. Suppose I'm writing few elements, 2 digit. So this is my vector. Let's execute vector, or you can call print function to execute elements of the vector simply. Okay. Now, as we check this sum, let's call sum. So sum will calculate all the elements like here. Call sum and pass this as an argument. Sum of x. Execute. So if you manually calculate this all elements, addition of all elements, you'll get this answer. But as given, suppose some NA value I am adding here. Let's execute first, then execute print. Here is the NA value, and then take sum of. So what we are getting? We are getting NA itself. We are expecting sum of all elements along with NA. If there is NA, just neglect that NA and then take sum of all elements. But here we are not getting. So here you check this option NARM. So these all, if there is we have to set a logical answer like true or false. So if it should missing values can be removed. So let's try this. So here along with x, this is one argument we passed. Let's add one more parameter, like suppose we want to remove any value. So there is na.rm. Let's keep this true. So it will check is there any na value and then take a sum of all elements. Yeah. So now we are getting this. Okay. So here we created this vector x with some elements and na value. Na is a missing value. And when we try sum of x, so it tries to add all the values in x, but na causes the issue, right? So to remove that issue, we can keep this true. So it will remove na values before summing. And we are getting this correct answer. Okay. Now there are many more functions we can use, built-in function. Then we'll move towards user-defined function. Suppose this is the same vector. Let's execute this again and let's calculate mean of x. Okay. So are you aware about mean? How to calculate mean? What is exactly mean? This is all statistical mean, median, mode, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we want to calculate mean, first understand mean like whatever default value, how many observations you have. So first it will take sum of all observations and divide by how many elements are there, means number of observations. Okay. So you need to provide default value for the argument to make your function flexible. So first let's try mean of x without any. So this is the mean for all the elements. Now let's add any here. After adding, we need to execute this line and then try to take mean. So same way here also we need to neglect that. We need to resolve this issue by using NARM. Let's keep this true. Now we're getting the mean value. For median also you can try this. Even like these are randomly added elements. So if we want to arrange this in proper order like ascending descending, so by default it is ascending order, sorting in the ascending order. But if you want to make it in descending, so you have to add one more parameter, descending or decreasing is equal to true. So let's first try ascending with x. Okay. So these are the values, and then because you can see here result the minimum value at the first position and so on in increasing order, so it's in ascending order. So let's try in descending order by adding this parameter decreasing. We need to keep this true. Okay. Now like here we calculated mean, or we also let me show this mean. Okay, so here you can see there is one parameter like trim, then NARM. So mean, as I told, it is like sum divided by total number of elements. But what exactly this trim? So you can see here 0 to 0.5 of observations to be trimmed from each end. So suppose this is your vector and there are total, suppose you want to calculate length. Let's calculate length of this x, like total elements, there are 10 elements. So if I keep this trim with 3, means it's in digit like point 0.3, like here it is given max point 10 and so on. So it will trim from both the ends. Okay, so how to do this? So let's try. Suppose first take mean of x. This is the mean. Now we want to trim suppose from left 3 elements and from right 3 elements. So whatever remaining amount numbers like these middle 4, so it will take mean of this only 4 elements. Like suppose let's add mean of x and trim option we have to apply. Let's trim with point 0.3. Okay, so you can calculate mean of this 4, you'll get this answer. Even if there is a NA, then like here we apply same thing, we need to apply NA.RM. That's it. So as many argument you can apply here. If there is any NA, then only you can use this. Okay, let's see some more functions. Let's clear the console. So mean is written. Then yeah, we can also create vector like range of values. Like here I'm creating 1 to 10 elements. So this is our y, 1 to 10. Now for this y, let's take a mean of y. So it's 5.5. As these are all ascending order numbers, let's try one more parameter, trim parameter. Okay, because it's a middle part, mean it is going to take 4, 5, 6. So that's why we are getting 5.5. If they are randomly any numbers, then we'll get a different value, random numbers. Then if you want to calculate some standard of this, suppose let's take square root. No need to calculate square root of each element separately. As this is function, just need to pass that vector and then it will get for each element square root value like this. Okay, so this is a repetitive task for each element, but by using function we can minimize this repetition. No need to write again and again same formula square root. Okay, then log 2. Suppose I'm taking log value for 2. Okay, then here is the value. So let's cross verify. If we want to calculate exponential, or we can call exp function, then pass this value, execute. So it's a 2. Even we can calculate log to the base 10 to the 2. These many options are available. Let's take for 100. This way you can verify. Also we can pass in other form like 100 to the base 10. Okay, still we are getting same answer. So it calculates natural log of 2 and this exponential of the value. This. Okay. So now let's focus on next part, that is user defined. So these are whatever we tried here. These all are built in functions. Built-in means these are simply, it is pre-built tool, we can say pre-built tools. It's already written code for these all things. We just need to use that and pass the argument, that's it. But when we create our own function, that is user defined function, so first thing, to create that function we have to follow some syntax. In the same way you have to create that function, and then how to pass argument, that it depends. Like there are types of argument how you can pass, some default argument, keyword argument, and all these things. So argument is what? Argument is nothing but parameter, like here we used in bracket. So when function accept that all values, or simply it is called as a input, and that input is called as a argument or parameters. Okay, so these inputs are used within the function, so we can perform the operation whatever written inside that function body. So let's understand first thing important, that is function name, because we are creating our own function, so we need to provide name. Okay. Then argument. The argument, when we declare the function and when we call the function, that time that term is called as a argument. When we call the function, when we declare, the term is called as a parameters. Like here we are calling these all things, like in print we are calling this x as a argument, because we are calling this x print function. But when we declare that function, that time that this term is a parameter. Then the third important part is body. We have to write our own line of code, whatever the function we want to perform. That code is a specific, it depends on the experimental requirement, or whatever your project's requirement, your query requirement. So these are series of statements which we want to execute as a block of code. And then last is a return keyword. This is not compulsory, so this is optional actually, when we want to execute the result. And whatever operation we are performing in that body, the answer of that calculation is nothing but your return statement as a output. So clear this difference between built-in and a user-defined. Built-in, they are just pre-made tools and they are already there. We just need to call them and use them. Fine. Then let's see. We'll create one simple function. Let's let's take one more example here. Suppose a sec function we already done, right? Sec, sec and a repeat function. They are also pre-built tools. We just call that function, and then let's take one example here. Suppose I'm creating one sequence of number. Like here we use separate number, one individual element. Here we use vector, here we use a range of elements. Simply we can create our own sequence. Like suppose we have this sec function, and here we can mention elements like start point, and we can provide end point. So these are the sequence value, like you can see here 32 to 46, because we have not mentioned interval. If we want to mention, then after this one more parameter we can add. But yeah, this is our sequence. Now if we want to create, suppose mean, here itself mean of range of numbers. So here you can provide like mean of, let's take from 22 to, let's take maximum value. So like this you can use. Also inside function you can add for sum as well, same way. Let's take sum of, suppose from 41 to any number. So for all numbers from 41 to 70, we'll get an addition of elements. Okay, so this way you can use built-in function. Now we already use your uh, mean, we already use sort, even there is a standard deviation, there's a median, many functions are there. But these all built-in function, if we want to club in as a one single block of code, and for one data structure, we want all the results. We want mean for that data structure, we want sd as well, we want median, even sorted value. So these all things, if we want to execute in one single statement, one single function, then definitely we have to create our own line of code, we have to create our own uh, function which will help to display result in one go, right? So let's define, suppose here I'm defining, we have to provide name. So suppose this is nothing but we are calculating stat, this function, this user defined function we are going to create. Okay, so first thing is name. Fine, suppose this is name. Be specific with name. So by calling name we can understand what exactly the functions properties. And then here we need to use keyword function. Whenever we are creating user defined function, we need to use this keyword function. Inside this, this is the input sequence which we are passing at the time of calling function. The first line, comma, first, now the time is to write line of code in curly brackets. So open close curly brackets, cursor is blinking, you just need to press enter, and here you can write line of code. So what we want to perform? We want to perform some calculations. Like we want to perform mean. Let's take mean for, suppose we can create here variable for, because mean is a keyword, we cannot use this as a variable name. So I'm using mean of values, and that values we have to provide. So we are getting this answer by calling mean function, because mean is itself built-in function, and then pass the data to calculate mean of that all things. Then standard deviation values by calling sd function for the same data set. If you want to sort your data, then you can use sorted data or sort values, like this, anything. For that there is a built-in function sort, provide this data to sort the data. What else we can write? You can write many more things, whatever you want to perform as your output. Okay, then time to execute the result. So this particular thing is called as a definition or function name. This is the function keyword, this is the input data. These are all lines, means statements, or line body we can say simply. And here is nothing but in return what you want, so that you can create by using return keyword. So in return, let's, as there are multiple things we want to execute, so we need to use c, because we are going to combine all the things. If you want to display just name, then just call these variables mean value comma standard value comma sorted value comma. So these three values you'll get. But if you want properly labeled outcome, then provide label, like suppose mean is nothing but your the output whatever we are getting in mean value variable. Then if you want to provide standard deviation by calling sdval. And what else we have? Sorted data, sort. So for here, let's call this sort val. Okay, so this is our return statement, and this is nothing but completion of the function creation step. Execute this, as our function is ready now. Now this function is ready in this environment. So the name of function is calculate stat. So this name we can use multiple times as a built-in function, because in built-in function what is required? Just need to call this value or data, data set, to perform this function. Like suppose we are calling y, so y is a data set and we are performing mean function for that y data set. So similarly, let's time to call function. Call function by function name. Here our function name is calculate stat, and inside this we can pass the data. So what data we have? Suppose we have this x. Let me execute this x first. So this is the current execution, and this is our data. Okay. So these are all things we are getting. All type of sort we are getting, mean, standard deviation, like this. Okay. Or if you want to create any new data set, so that also you can create, and that you can pass Like here I'm creating suppose one sample data. Okay, sample data is nothing but let's take some elements. Suppose this is my sample data set, and this data set I'm calling inside this function. So function name is calculate stat. Inside this I'm passing this data set. Okay, let's execute. Clear? If you want to execute this result as a separate variable, then you can display your result. This is your result, and then you can call this result and inside print function, or if you want to label it properly here, you can call. So this way in one go you can execute all these statistical formulas, functions. Okay, so mean, median, mode, these are all like used for statistical or simply central tendency, finding central tendency. Okay, now let's see different options how we can pass argument. Here we just pass one single argument like a data, but inside this parenthesis, round parenthesis, we can use different types of argument. Here any query? Okay, so we'll create function. Suppose we want to calculate area of rectangle. Okay, because for this there is no any pre-built tool by which we can calculate the area, so we have to write formula how to calculate area for rectangle, right? So let's create first step is create function and then call function. So to create function, provide name. Suppose this is for calculating, let's take same name, calculate, we can say area. Now this is function name. So create function by using function keyword. Inside this, for area we need length and width. So both values you can pass as an input. First is length, second is width. So these two arguments. Now write what you want to perform. So yeah, we want to calculate area. So let's first create variable to store the answer. So in area, let's use this length and length into width. No need to use these brackets. This is the answer. If you want to execute the output in return, so in return you can call this area. So that will be your output. So this is the definition part. Let's execute. Our function is ready. So what we need, we just need to pass argument to pass this inside function. First calculate function, call function. This is a calling. Okay. This is function name, and here we can pass the values. Like suppose this 5 is length value and 4 is width value. Here we have not given any criteria, like there are types like positional argument. So position matters. Okay? Or keyword argument, like if we call this width as a 5, so we have to call by keyword width. So we have to assign this width here and then assign this 5 value. So now this 5 is considered as a width. So this time it will take as per the declared inside the definition part. Okay. So for these values we'll get the output 20. Okay, so here what we defined this calculate area, and we calculated with length and width, and in return is just to specify the value which you want to return from that function. Clear? So first thing, function call basically invokes the function with that specific argument, so it will execute the code and get your result. and there is a scope. So let me as we already learned variable and types of variable, right? So here I'll explain what exactly scope. There are two types of scope for variable. One is local and global. So here you can see this length and width, these two values we declared inside this function call or this area as well. So whatever declared inside function that are called as a local variable. If I call this area outside or this length and width outside, then it will give error because these are not explicitly declared variable. But suppose this x we declared here, right? So here x, somewhere here x. So they are global variables. That global means we can call them from anywhere in this environment, but local variables are restricted to only for that function. So scope means whatever the variables which variables defined inside the function that are local to that function, means they can only exist within that function, not outside the functions. Clear? And here we are creating function for what purpose? Reusability. So this function promotes whatever the code. That code is reused, or simply this process is called as a encapsulation. Encapsulation the specific task, these three lines or these three four lines, any number of lines, and then that particular task we can call multiple times for different elements. Like here, no need to write again and again formula. Simply I am calling this function, and then I'll pass different values, any number of values. Okay, here we'll get the exponential value. Let's take some small, like this. Clear? Let's understand types of argument. So first, which is required one, this one which we use like data, or here somewhere we used uh, length and all this thing. So these are required argument, or required means we have to pass this argument. Without that, we are not getting any value as an answer. So this is called as a required. Then there is a default argument. Okay, so default means it's already declared the value inside the definition. Like here, suppose I want to keep length standard 10. So I declared this value inside the definition part here itself. So whenever I'll call function, if I not pass this value 10, then it will take default which is declared 10. And then the next value, that is nothing but the user defined value. So this is default argument. Or we can also use keyword argument. Keyword means, as I told, we can call this value by calling the variable name. So that is a keyword argument, or simply keyword is called as a named argument. Then if we are not aware about how many elements we are going to pass, so that is a arbitrary argument. Arbitrary, or that is also called as a ellipsis or arbitrary arguments. Okay, so these are different types of argument we can use. Suppose we want to calculate GC, content of any sequence, and then what is required? Sequence must be there, right? If we don't have any sequence, then from which we can calculate the GC content. So that is a required argument. We have to that variable, and that variable we can use as an input to calculate GC content of the sequence. Then suppose we want to perform calculation, and we want to keep any threshold value, standard threshold value. So that time we can use default argument, so that can predefine value. Okay, but if you want any customize or any new value, user defined value, that when you call that function, that time you can keep. Suppose here I declared length 10, but yeah, I don't want length 10 when I call this function. So you can pass two argument here, so this will replace the default one. Clear this part? Okay, can you try for suppose we are using this required argument, and we have suppose a range of elements, or you can create element list as a vector or some, or you can use range of values by using colon. So suppose there are 1 to 10 or any number of elements we have, or it is not defined, so it is user defined. So for that all element, if we want to calculate square for each element from that structure. Okay, so that structure might be suppose a a is user defined. When I execute this or call this function, I can put 20. So for 20 elements I can calculate the square value, but this is not predefined. So in that time, suppose we are creating here function by the name, let's take square of each element. So square, I'm giving name. To create function, we can use function keyword. For what number exactly? So this is suppose, let's take any specific name also you can write, like here we have mentioned length and width. You can write your number, or you can simply mention alphabet. It's like this is just a argument. Then here we can write what you want to perform. But as there are multiple elements we want to provide, and that many for that each element we want to take square of that element row. So here we can use loop. Inside function we can use control structure. So loop we already learned, right? By using for, when we know how many elements are there, or by using while till condition comes true. So here I'm using for loop. Inside for, let's use iterator. In, so let's initialize something, like we suppose want to start from 1 to 1 to a, and a is user defined. So when we put call this function, that time we can pass this a value. Now for loop we have to write, if we are entering inside for loop, then what we want to execute. So we just want to calculate square of each element. So this is our formula. Let's declare one variable to store the output, and that variable we want to display. So here I just call this print function to display b. So this is nothing but definition. So first declare this function, or function is ready. Now time to use this as a built-in function. So now time to call this function. So function name is what? Square or SQ. Here I want to calculate square for total 1 to 10 elements. So 1 is given, A is nothing but 10. So here you can see the result. No need to write this I square formula for each element, as this is a block of code, and this will reuse for each and every element which is provided as an argument, like for 10. So 1 to 10. Like here we calculated for length and width. You can try for radius, area, area of circle by providing radius value. Radius will be your user input. When you call that function, that time you can pass the radius value. Okay, pi r square you can use. Try this. I'll write your formula. So block of code means your formula. So you can write this formula. Area is nothing but, you can directly call pi, and then this is the formula, but the same argument you have to pass inside this function keyword. The same thing you have to use here. That is nothing but your radius. If you use a, then pi a square. Okay, so use this cautiously. Here I'm using a radius, so radius square. Use this, and then create your user defined function. 2 minutes are more than enough for this. Please do it if you're not getting any point, if you're facing any difficulty how to create, how to write code, then please ask. Yes, Nadifa, any query?
Man, is that I um one of fixed function or
Hmm?
user defined function?
User defined function, you have to write your own line of code. Like here we have created already for rectangle, this one.
I mean I in one to a number
I'm not
line number
huh?
65.
Huh?
If we were to change
You
letter
can
I
share
with
your
another word, can it still
okay,
work?
line number 65.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I, you can use any word. It's not mandatory to use I. This is just a iterator. You can use num. So here you have to use num. If you use here num, suppose, or x, anything, let's consider, you consider this as a num, as a iterator. So this I should replace. This is nothing but number square. Okay. So for first element, let me execute this or element. Like suppose 1 to a. Now we have 10 input, means 1 to 10. So 1 to 10 means first it will calculate 1. Num means 1, 1 square 1, then 2 square 4, 3 square 9, like this till end of this range will get the square of each element. So this is iterator. This is just a simple variable which acts as a iterator to iterate through the loop. That is the thing. Here no need to create any iterator, as just need to calculate or create a formula and use this formula inside the function statement. That's it. Any other query? Are you able to write this? Okay, let me tell you here, and simply we'll take example of previous formula. So here what we want to calculate, area for circle, right? So I'll just write a brief name. This is for circle. And for circle, what is important input? Value of radius. So here if you write x a in alphabet, then that alphabet you have to use as a, inside the formula. But here if I mention this as a radius, so the same thing I'm using here. So this is suppose variable, nothing but area of circle, and here you just paste this formula, and output we want to declare like this in return. So this is a definition part. Now time to call function. So our function name is what? Calculate area for circle. Suppose I want to calculate area for 5. Okay, so this is the answer. Suppose our circle is very big and here I am passing 60 radius. So we'll get this answer. So no need to write this line of code again and again. Now the same example I'll tell you with, as here we use multiple arguments, more than one argument. But if you want to create the same thing with let's create with a default argument. So default means we can, or keyword argument means we need to call this with keyword. So suppose here I am passing this value 100. Okay, execute this, and when we call this, so as there are two requirement input, two requirements, but one is fulfilled as a default one, so here I am just passing only one. Width is missing, just wait. No default. First we need to execute this. This is the function. So here we assign this first value, or let's assign this as a width. So we can take input for length. Okay. For second argument, here I kept this default value. So for first argument, this is considered as a first argument. Otherwise, we can call by uh, keyword. So this, we can consider this as a keyword. Like, let me tell you, keyword. The same example, if we use here length and width, and if we want to calculate the rectangle, let's minimize this name. Suppose this is for rectangle, and we have this length and width. So if we want to calculate area, so this is the formula. Along with this, suppose we want to calculate perimeter, or multiple formula you can mention here. This is for first argument plus second argument, that is width. So in return, as we mentioned in previous example C, because there are multiple things we have to display, so either you can use vector, you can use list, because to collect all elements together, any one data structure is required. So suppose here we'll try for list. Okay, so result I'm going to save inside the list. So first create list function, and then provide, suppose here I'm providing label as an area, where we can call this variable which hold the area. Simply I'm calling this variable as output. Second, we can call here perimeter, and then call this variable which hold this value. Okay, so this is our result. Now by using return statement, we can call this result as output to execute that output. Then execute this whole thing. Now here I am calling, suppose this is the function name. Inside bracket, what we need to pass, these two values. Fine. So if I'm calling by keyword, keyword means variable name. So if I want to call first, if I'll provide 10 comma 5, so the first value always considered as a first variable name, or second width is considered as a 5. So we'll get this non-function attempt to apply non. Okay, okay, okay. So here let's execute first. Still it is not working. So what we can do, we can, whenever we want to call by keyword, then we can call, like here I'm calling first width. So we can call this width is equal to 10, and then length is equal to 5. So it will take that specific variable, and accordingly it will calculate the values, the formula, whatever we have mentioned. Clear? Let's try this. Done. Let's take one more example for default. Like, let's consider the name of function is my function. So this is the name function keyword we can use. And here suppose we just want to mention country, but we want to keep this as a default name like this, and just mention what you want to display. So here we can mention inside curly bracket, we already use print, we use result return, so let's use paste function. So here I'm using suppose, and then we just call that variable which is declared inside this function name. This is the name, this is the variable name. Let's call this. Okay, so this is a declaration part. Let's execute the function and time to call the function. So function name is my function. So as we already declared one default value inside definition, so if I not passing here when I calling the function, if I'm not passing any argument, so it will give, it will fetch the default which is declared. But yeah, you can also customize this. If you want any specific input, then you can write this as well. So it will replace the default one. Okay, so here we use default argument, keyword argument, more than one, two arguments. You can also try with three arguments. Like suppose you want to perform any mathematical functions with three variables x, y, z. Okay, and any formula you can mention. Like here we mention length into width or length plus width. Here pi we have used. So similarly, suppose you want to perform x into y plus z. That is your result. So these all things you can use length, width, height like this, and create a variable, create a function by using multiple arguments. Okay, so this is all about function. When we learn packages, that time we will work with the biological function, biological packages. So we can deal with a sequence and then we can apply different functions for the sequence. Like here we can use your own function to calculate gc content. Like first you need to use length of the sequence, total number of g and c. By using sum function you can take addition of g and c, count of g and c, then divide it. And if you want to take a percent value, then multiply this with 100. So this is user defined step. But when we learn packages, then from bioconductor, you can directly call GC function and calculate the GC content of the sequence. Yeah. Okay, so that's it for today. This is very use means important function to know function, because the step first control structure, we can use different control structure to build a function, to build a user defined function. So please practice to write your own function and try to execute that function as a built-in function. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Keep practicing.